Whether you're looking for answers to specific life questions or seeking to become the best version of you possible, welcome to the Mental Breakdown and Psychreg podcast, where we offer insight, information, and strategies based upon research and years of practice as clinical psychologists. So sit back, have a listen, and get connected with our hosts, Dr. Berney Wilkinson and Dr. Richard Marshall. Welcome back. Richard, today we're going to talk on a topic that we haven't talked about in a while.
Right.
And it is from a recent article published in Psychology Today entitled, "How Can Shootings Such as Sandy Hook Be Prevented?"
Right.
Now, we often talk about the titles of articles that we review. And this one, of course, caught our eye. But I often think that these kinds of titles are, I don't like them. Because how can you, if we can prevent it, we would be preventing them. Now, we can learn from it. We're going to talk about some things that, can help prevent it. But, to say, if we do this, we're going to prevent these types of shooting. Mm-hmm. That probably is a little bit of over ambitious, overstating things.
False hope. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There was a recent shooting in New York.
Right.
8 people were killed. And one of the interviews the next morning, I think it was the police chief or somebody maybe from Homeland Security or something who said, it's really impossible to stop these sort of things. I mean, there really is no surefire way to stop this sort of stuff. I mean, anybody can rent a car or a truck. We have access in this country. This is we have a very open society. And there isn't very much you can do about it to prevent it. I mean, you can't stop somebody, and you're not going to know. This man was admitted into the country, not
years ago.
Yeah, years ago. He had a green card from an area that not one of the Muslim-dominated countries that we hear about in the news these days, and seemed to be radicalized after he got here. So there was no way to trace anything. Right. There were no footprints. And so, though we'd like to, each time one of these things happens, and the Las Vegas shooting or this shooting or whichever, there is this this explosion of opinion and solutions and what we should do about it. And what I like about the article is it takes a more reasonable approach. It's after the dust settles. Let's take a look at this and figure out what we can do. Yeah, absolutely. So these authors talk a little bit about, and I guess it almost looks like a husband-wife pair. I wasn't sure,
but he's a PhD and she is an MD.
Right.
But what they talk about here is that I guess some new information came out about Adam Lanza, the guy that did the shooting at Sandy Hook, and they kind of whittle it down to a couple of things that we can look for to help sort of get an idea as to who might be at risk. Again, before we even get into it, we got to do the warning. Just because your kid or somebody has a couple of these or one or two of these or even all 3 of these things doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do anything. I can't tell you how many times parents come in worried to death that their 8-year-old is going to be a serial killer because he still has bedwetting
because bedwetting was
because that was one of the things identified by the FBI as a potential warning sign. No. There's loads of reasons why that could be happening, and so let's not jump to that unnecessarily.
There's a new TV program about serial killers called.
You're talking about the one on Netflix?
Yes.
Mindhunter.
Is that what it? Oh, and they call them. This is a new. It's a new. I say science. This whole thing about profiling.
Right.
It started long ago, but it really began in earnest in the 70s.
Yeah.
With the rise of serial killers, we discovered serial killers. We didn't know. We had never thought about serial killers. In fact, they called them sequence killers.
It's a great program.
My daughter watches it, and she was the first person to tell me that I should watch it, that I would enjoy it, the psychology behind it. Anyway, this is a relatively new science, this whole business about the mind of a criminal and what should we be looking for. And the most you can do is take a person who does this and say, okay, what were the characteristics? But over time, since the 70s, we've accumulated some pretty reliable profiles of what a potential assassin would look like.
And one of the reasons why it's a new science that still isn't very refined is because we're really not, our ability to research or to talk to these individuals
limited.
Is very, very limited. I mean, they're considered a protected population, and you can't just, there are many hoops and fiery hoops that we would have to jump through to be able to do
access.
An interview or something with these folks. And I remember when back in the 80s or 90s, when I don't remember when Ted Bundy was, but the 90s, when a reporter or someone got in to interview him, and it was like that was huge news because unlike in that show Mindhunter, where they had access to these guys, things changed in the I think it was the late 70s or 80s to where you don't have that kind of open access anymore.
And many of them don't survive.
Right.
I mean, many of these serial killers or shooters take their own lives, or they're killed by officers. So
the moral of all of that killer talk is that it's extremely difficult to predict. We don't know what absolutely predicts any of these things, because a person could look like they are just healthy, doing just fine, and then do something outrageous.
I remember when Columbine first happened. There was an immediate study, because this was sort of a new, wasn't the first, but it was new, because I remember ABC called one of the hospitals where I worked at the time, and we didn't know anything about it because we were dealing with children with impulsive aggression. Kids with impulsive aggression act one way.
Right.
This was premeditated. Right. And we told ABC, we said, we really don't know much about, we didn't know much about this premeditated, planned execution. But there was a study done immediately, and the first conclusion was that these kids had been bullied and they were taking it out on their perpetrators. Well, later, there were subsequent studies done that painted a very different picture. Right. And that's when the whole issue of mental illness came out, when people knew about this, other kids knew about it, their parents knew that their kids were doing certain things. These boys had access to large amounts of weaponry. Right. And so the second analysis of Columbine, which was in the
late 90s. 98, I think. No, 99.
Because Columbine happened in 99. Right. And so it was in the early 2000s that these other studies began. In fact, I think one person did a PhD dissertation on this issue, and that became the basis of a book that he wrote. Yeah. Which gave us a very different perspective. And so it's that second perspective that these authors in this article are bringing to the Sandy Hook tragedy. And certainly it is a tragedy. But they're saying, wait a minute, let's be a little more analytical and not just start arming citizens. And that's what I appreciate in the article is that one reaction is, well, let's give everybody guns. And people said that. Right. Let's arm teachers. Let's arm restaurant workers. Let's arm bank tellers. Let's give everybody guns, so that the head of the NRA said the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And from there it was like, okay, let's arm everybody so we can defend ourselves. That's one solution. Right. Okay. I'm not sure that I agree with it, because I worry a little bit about people carrying guns around in their purses and jackets, and college professors with...
It would be the Wild West.
Yeah, I mean, didn't we do that once?
Yes.
We said, wait, there's a better way to do this.
We moved beyond that.
So they're saying, let's come up with a better solution. Right. Or a different solution. Right.
So they have 3 warning signs that they talk about. And one is, as you mentioned a moment ago, that we have talked about before, and it's sort of the third one on their list, but we'll go ahead and mention that one first, because that one will be quick, is the unwillingness to recognize and accept and receive mental health treatment. Right. Again, we've the the caveat is, not everybody with a mental illness is dangerous.
Right.
Most people with a mental illness are not dangerous.
Correct.
But if a person is in need of mental health treatment, it's imperative that they get this help and support they need.
That's right. Adam Lanza had neurodevelopmental issues.
Right.
Everybody, his mother knew that. His parents knew it. His school knew it. His friends knew it.
Right.
Everybody knew that he had these issues. Doesn't mean he's going to be anything, but he should be getting treatment. And if he wasn't, that could be a potential problem. The untreated mental illness.
Now, the other two I think are really interesting. One is aggrieved entitlement.
Right.
And the second is repetitive personal failures. And I think we need to go into tease that apart a little bit, because we talk often here about the importance of failing sometimes, but we're talking about it a little bit differently when it comes to these kinds of issues.
Right.
So when we talk about aggrieved entitlement, what we're really getting to here is the concern that people grow up or live in a world where they feel as though they are entitled to whatever they want. And that if they're not afforded what they want, then that is a personal affront to their being.
I'm not getting enough.
Right.
And it's first of all, it's not my fault. That's one warning sign. No, they take no responsibility. But also, I'm not getting what I should receive. I'm not getting my fair share, or I'm being shortchanged
what I deserve. Right. So that's the aggrieved entitlement. Now, when it comes to the repetitive personal failures, again, it's sort of like the bedwetting thing. A lot of people experience a lot of repeated failures
and don't
do any of these things.
Right.
But what happens is when you have the combination of this stuff, so when you have the entitlement, the aggrieved entitlement, you have the absence of adequate mental health treatment when it's needed. And on top of that, you have repeated failure after repeated failure without sort of the processing. Because if you think about a person who is entitled and has some mental health issues where they're not problem solving, or they're not seeing things in the healthy, informative, educative way, you end up with these becoming more and more. It's more and more damage that's done to the person, and if they feel entitled, as you said, that means that it's somebody else's fault, and so they have to pay for what they're doing to me.
That's right. And when we talk about repeated failures, I mean, we're talking about people, and in most of these cases, there was a pattern of repeat.
Right.
We talk about, some people talk about schools, they refer to schools as great sorting machines.
Right.
And they really are.
Right.
Schools elevate the successful students, and they denigrate or expel the underachievers. And most of you who have been through high school know how difficult it can be to be marginalized and to be dehumanized in that very hothouse, under the bright lights environment that is a high school. And so many of these children have failed at school.
Right.
And failing at school is failing at life when you're
when school is
before
your life.
age 18. That's right. That's what that parents will say to the kids. Well, that's your job. You go to school every day and do your work.
Right.
And it is. School is life until you graduate. But these are students who have had repeated failures and have been damaged by it.
Right.
So again, it's the combination. We all experience failure, but it's repeated failures and this marginalization, dehumanization that occurs because you are a loser.
Right.
Okay. So there's that, but you have this sense of entitlement because some losers will decide to take their own lives, and not anybody else's. Okay. So you have the three in combination. That's the problem.
Right.
But there's one more factor, and that's access to guns.
Right.
Okay. And that's what Adam Lanza had.
Right.
I mean, he was encouraged. So you have these three ingredients. Predisposing ingredients, and then you put a gun in their hands.
Right.
That's a lethal combination.
Right. Yeah. So we have to do, if anything should be learned from this, it is that we have to be more vigilant in what we're watching.
That's right.
We need to be more vigilant in making sure that treatment is received or support is received if and when it's needed. And we need to make sure that we are, that we don't denigrate the people who are struggling as much as we are currently doing.
We punish people who are failing.
Right.
Which adds,
it's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The other thing is, in almost all of these cases, somebody knew
Right.
that the killer was at least contemplating
Right.
such an act. And so, if you know, please tell.
Right.
And that's another way to avoid this. Rather than arming the entire country.
Right.
If you're told that this is going to happen, in Columbine, they told their friends not to come to school. Kids that they knew and liked,
Right.
they said, "Don't come to school tomorrow."
Yeah.
Okay, so somebody knew something was going on,
Exactly.
and you have to tell.
Exactly. So, all right, that's it.
Tough topic.
As we've been doing all week, we're gonna just quick announcement that we have some new artwork and some new music on its way. It'll be here very soon. We are working on it almost as we speak.
Yeah.
I mean, we're speaking very early right now, but as you're listening to this, it's probably being worked on. And so hopefully within the next week or two, we will have the new artwork and some new music and just kind of bumping things up a smidge.
Right.
But we'd love to hear from you. What can we do that will make this podcast better for you? What can we do what topics can we to discuss or talk about? Is there anything about the format or anything like that could be beneficial, that you feel could be take the podcast to sort of the next level in providing you what you're looking for? In line with that, we are working to build a Patreon page, Patreon, so that we can, those of you who are interested and willing and able to provide some support. This takes a lot of time. We spend hours. You mentioned this in the last podcast. Yeah. We still haven't done the math to figure out how many hours a week it takes us.
I'm almost afraid to calculate.
I know.
It's like another whole job.
Exactly. Because it is 8 o'clock now, and we have been recording podcast for this week since 6 o'clock this morning. Right. So we've just been recording for 2 hours now, and then we will spend a few more hours editing and fun stuff. So we have a Patreon page that's coming, because not only do we want to help open up some of our time so that we can do more stuff and that we can improve our equipment and all of that, but also so that we can do more. We want to do more. We want to be able to provide workshops and classes and seminars and all of that online for you, so that, again, we can get you the information that you are looking for, whether it's from us directly or even being able to bring in other people that can talk about things that are of interest and in need, that you're in need of. So be on the lookout for that, and we'll go from there.
Right. We want to do more, but more takes time.
Yes.
And so we appreciate any way you can help out with that.
And one of those ways that you can help out right now, before the Patreon page even gets out or anything, is to like us, follow us, subscribe on YouTube and iTunes and everywhere else. Write a review or rate us on iTunes would be a great way to increase our visibility for other people who might want to join in on the conversation.
I think the biggest step the immediate step that everybody can take is to go to iTunes and write a review and start communicating with us. We'll write back.
Yeah, definitely so. All right, that is it for today. Until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.